Hey guys, it's Mike. Today I've got the daily driver Tundra in the garage here, and doing an oil change on it. And I'm also going to go ahead and do a tune-up with valve cover gaskets. Figured I'd do a video on it and do a DIY on the valve cover gasket job. And I've got parts laid out over here, so I'm going to go over that real quick and show you guys what we need to do on this to do the spark plugs and valve cover gaskets and tube seals as well. And we're going to put a new PCV valve on the valve cover as well. So let's get into it. All right, so over here on the table, I've got valve cover gaskets. You got your right hand side right there. We've got your left hand side. We've got tube seals. There's your part number for the tube seals. We've got an OEM PCV. Okay, there's your part number for that. Now, normally I recommend going with Denso plugs, the OEM plug. I got these on a really good deal, these NGKs, Iridiums. So I'm going to put these in my truck, but if I was working on somebody else's, I would definitely recommend going with Densos. And I've got a set of magnetic spark plug sockets right here. These things are amazing. These are Matco, but if you can swing a set of these and you do there's some oil in there I need to clean up. Anyway, if you can swing a set of these, highly recommend them. They are worth every penny. But what we're going to do is we're going to get in here and start tearing this thing apart. And if you're super beginner level here, this is your valve cover right here. Okay, this is the driver's side, and you got one on the passenger side. The driver's side is probably a little bit harder, but we're going to get into here in just a minute. But we're going to unplug your coil packs. You got 4 of those over here. We're going to unbolt the coils, pull them out. We're going to move these a few things out of the way. We're going to move this vacuum line here. We're going to move this fuel line and then tuck the harness up out of the way, remove the hose for the PCV, and basically just make it as clear as possible. And then we'll start taking out all the 10mm bolts that go around the perimeter. There's 9 of them. And then we're going to pull the valve cover off. And then I'll show you after that what the next step is. Alright, so I was in the middle of an oil change, so I already have the oil cap off here. But what we're going to do is we're going to start pulling some of this stuff off. You squeeze this with your hand, pull this out of the way. You just kind of rotate it around and tuck it out of the way like that. We can remove this fuel line right here. You pull this safety clip up like this. It just slides up, and then there's 2 tabs on each side. You can press it and then just very gently wiggle it back. Okay, all right, and then we can take this, tuck that out of the way. And then on this side, this is a more of a crimped line right here, but you can take it off on this side down here. This is the other fuel line. And just do the same thing very gently. Okay, and you can kind of just tuck that up like this out of the way for now. That's not necessary to do the valve cover gaskets, but I like to disconnect them. It gives me a little bit more room. Next, what we need to do is unplug all these coil packs. Now, if you're familiar with some of these Toyota connectors, especially of this time frame, they will break if you're not careful. What you can do is take a little pick, okay, a little pick like this, and you can take the pick and get it underneath the clip like so, and then kind of guide it up like that. It does help, so that way you don't break the connector. So we're just going to go down, pop all these off like this. Okay. All right. We're just going to take the harness. We're just going to kind of tuck all these guys up as high and out of the way as you can. All right. Next, there's the PCV hose right here. We're going to squeeze the little clamp and then pull the hose straight off just like that. Okay, and these hoses are usually hard and brittle. That's it. Just rotated it out of the way. It still keeps its same shape. You can see the PCV valve right there, or PC. I guess it's PCV, but the valve, you can see it right here. That's what we're going to be replacing. Next step is we're going to pull these coil packs out real quick. And I like to use, it's a 10 mil. I've got a 10 mil on a swivel socket. So I'm just going to go down the line here, take these out. Okay, set those bolts to the side. All right, next we're going to pull the coil packs out. And I usually just set them up on the cowl. And something to note as you're pulling these out, look for oil. There's a little bit of oil on this one. But that's a good indication that if there's oil in the spark plug tubes, it's a good indication that the tube seals are bad. So yeah, look at that one. Good amount of oil on that one. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, or those out of the way, what we're going to do now is I'm going to take this ground cable off right here, just to give me a little bit more room when we're going to pull the valve cover off. I'm going to just tuck these wires up like that. And now there are 9 of these 10 millimeters that go around. I believe it's 9. And we're going to just go around and take all those out. So that's what we're going to do now. Just drop that one to get that. Gotta get the ones on the bottom now. And 2 more. This is why I like to use the swivel sockets. They make life a lot easier. If you can get your gun down in there. Loosen them up and then set the gun down. Then you can get down in here and grab the bolts. Alright. Alright, so all of our bolts are out. Our harness is pretty much out of the way. What we can do now is we can go ahead and basically on the driver's side right here, what I'll do is I'll grab the oil filler tube and just gently pull on it, just like that. Okay, and we're just going to wiggle it off. Okay, and then once you got it free, then you can pull this hose up and just kind of pull her on out like that. There you go. There's your valve cover. Now this is a nice surprise. This is my first time having the valve covers off of this engine on this truck. I bought this truck just a few months ago, and look how nice golden brown that is, or like a nice gold color. That's really good. That's what you want to see. And this engine's got over 200,000 miles on it, but that's what you want to see though, is a nice kind of just clean gold color like that. No sludge, no buildup or anything like that. So that's really good. All right, so what you do now is sometimes the gasket will stick to the valve cover, but on this case it stuck to the actual head itself. So you just grab it and just pull it off. I can tell you right now, this valve cover gasket has been replaced before. This is still super soft. And if you got to look at those tube seals on the bottom of the valve cover itself, they were blue. And my guess is that this is a Felpro gasket set. Um, I'm not saying that this was leaking because it was Felpro, but it was leaking. And in the past, I have had experiences with Felpro gaskets leaking. So, take that for what it is. All right. Got myself a magnet real quick so I can grab that bolt that I dropped right here. There we go. So real quick, I'll talk about these. So these valve cover gasket or valve cover bolts, they have these rubber grommets on them, as you can see right there. Okay, they slide down, and when you tighten the bolt down, which I believe is 13 foot-pounds, or no, sorry, no, I'll double check that and correct myself here in a second. It's probably inch-pounds, but anyway, when you tighten this down, this little rubber grommet sandwiches down and just applies nice even pressure on the valve cover. Um, these wear out. Definitely recommend getting these replaced if you can. These are actually not in terrible shape. They're not super flattened out, but I'm going to reuse them. This is my truck. It's on me, but I'm going to reuse these. But anyway, I do recommend getting some new ones and putting some new ones on there. Next thing we're going to go over real quick is something important that a lot of people will miss when doing valve covers on the 2UZs and some other Toyotas. But on the back of the head over here, if you can see that right there, there's two of them. There's these little half moon shapes. You take a pair of pliers and grab them and just kind of give it a little wiggle, and it comes out like that. Okay, so this right here needs to be resealed. And if you look, this has never been resealed. This has got old like factory gray RTV on it from the factory, so that's never been resealed. And that could have been where it was leaking at. But so yeah, if you can see that right back here, there's one there, and then there's one on the bottom. I'm gonna go ahead and get that one now. There we go. So I got both of them right there. And I will clean these up really well, clean all the old RTV or fibbage off of them, and then we will apply a new bead on here when we go back together, which I'll show you. All right, so the next step before we actually get to the valve cover itself, the next step is we're going to clean up the mating surface where the valve cover meets the head. I usually take a flathead screwdriver, and right here in the corner of the cam cap, there's usually a little bit of RTV right here that I scrape off. I try not to drop it inside the engine, but just kind of clean that off a little bit there. Try not to actually, you don't want to like gouge the aluminum or anything either, but I just kind of scrape that off of there and get it, get the area clean of any foreign RTV. Okay, and then once you get that kind of sorted out there, then you can move to the bottom of the cam cap, which is going to be down here. And that came right off. Okay, and then on the back side back here, you can sometimes just kind of scrape it off. Usually that comes off pretty easily. Now I'm going to go back over this, but I'm just trying to give you an example of where to clean. So clean these two cam cap areas here, and then we're going to wipe down this sealing surface really good all the way around. All right, guys, we got our valve cover out, obviously, and it's pretty dirty, so we're definitely going to clean this up. I am really low on brake clean. I usually have a case of it. I'm down to 1 can left, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pressure wash this. But first, before I pressure wash it, I'm going to pull these tube seals out, and these are definitely, my guess is Felpro. So we're going to pull those out, and just to give you, we can talk about proper ways to do things, but the way I do this, and you can see they go in from this direction. They have these little tabs on here. There's 4 of them on each one. Those tabs get folded down afterwards, and they kind of lock the tube seal in from coming out. But the tabs have to be bent up, to come out. So what I actually end up doing is I take a flathead and I hammer it down in between the tube seal, and I pry the tube seal out, and then I bend these out afterwards. So I'm going to show you how I do that now. All right, so I'm sure everybody's got a different way to do this, but I don't judge. This is the way I do it. So I take the screwdriver and I go in between the outside of the tube seal and the valve cover. Did you hear that? I hammer it down until it bottoms out on the valve cover. Okay, this side right here. Obviously, you don't want to go too hard because you'll break it. But yeah, you don't want to just hammer through the valve cover. The valve cover is just aluminum and it will break. So you just tap it in there as soon as it gets to the bottom, stop, and then I take this and I just pry the tube seal out just like that. Okay, so we do that with each one of these, and sometimes the tabs, kind of like this one, sometimes the tabs will kind of bend out when you pry it out anyway. But it's important to bend these outwards before putting the new tube seal in there, because the new tube seal will catch this and you can rip the tube seal. Okay, so we don't want to do that. But anyway, so I'm going to pull the rest of these out, and then we're going to wash this thing and get it nice and clean. Alrighty, so we got this thing cleaned up about as good as we can get it with the resources that I have right at the moment. It's better than it was, but definitely not perfect. We got our tube seals here, and there's your part number. Okay, if you were looking to do OEM tube seals, which I do recommend. We're gonna tap these guys in, and I'll show you how I like to do that. So these are directional. All right, so they do go on in one direction. Okay, so if you look, they are different top to bottom. All right, now if you look, this side, the seal, the inside of the seal has like a concave to it, right? Like a funnel almost. All right, well, the spark plug tubes that stick up out of the head, the tube seal has to slide onto that tube. Okay, so you want the concave to be facing like that, so that way it slides down onto it. If it's facing this way, it's going to want to just grab that tube, and it's going to rip your seal, and it's going to leak immediately. So just make sure that you put those in the right way. What I like to do is I take these seals, I put them in here. Okay, I kind of just wedge them in as best I can, like that. All right, and I just take a regular old hammer. All right, and I tap on the outside ring of the seal. Okay, the outside ring. This is pliable. Okay, you're not going to hurt that, but this outside is a nice hard plastic. Okay, so I just tap on the outside edge, and yes, of course, I am hitting that right there. Okay, but that's pliable. It's going to get pushed down. It's not going to hurt anything. So I get it on there like that, and I just tap, kind of using the, and just like that. Okay, now That seal is pretty much seated all the way. Okay, and once you feel like it's seated down all the way, then you could take that same hammer and hammer down those tabs. Okay, you're just gonna knock those tabs back down. Okay, so after you get that, just like that. Okay, now obviously you don't want to put this hammer on the seal and just whack it and just blow that seal out. I think that's self-explanatory. This can be done with a little bit of finesse, but that's what you end up with. Okay, just like it was before. These guys do get, a little beat up, but there's really no way around this. These have to get folded up and folded back down, and that keeps your seal from coming out. And you can look, that seal is perfectly fine, nice and pliable. Okay, so we're going to do that across the board and start getting ready to get that thing back in the truck. All right, you can see we got that. All the seals are in there. All the tabs are folded back down. Looks good. They're all facing the right direction. All right. And now what we're going to do next is get this valve cover gasket in place. Okay. The valve cover gaskets are side specific as well. They are molded to fit the valve covers, so they only go on one way. Okay, and they just press in. You might hear some people say that you need some RTV to get them to hold in place. That is not accurate. You're not supposed to use it. The gasket will do its job. And if it's a quality gasket like these OEM gaskets, this valve cover gasket will stay in here when you go to drop it in place. It's kind of like a press fit. You can work your way around, make sure it's all sitting nice and even. Looks good. You don't want any spots like sitting up. You want it to be sitting nice and flat. There you go. See how that's sitting nice and flat all the way around? Don't worry about the corners. I'll do a little explaining there when we go to put this in. All right, so the valve cover is now ready to go in. I do have a new PCV for it, the valve. There's the part number right there, if you can see that. There you go. I'm going to put that in afterwards because it's much easier to bolt the valve cover down and to loosen that up with it bolted down instead of trying to hold it. Those things can be pretty tight. The next thing we're going to do is clean those half moons up and then get ready to install this bad boy. All right, so next thing we're going to do, we got these cleaned up. Probably not the most conventional method, but the wire wheel cleans them up pretty good. You can see that they're nice and clean, all the old fibbages off of there. We got our OEM Toyota fibbage, FIPG, it's RTV. And what you do is, I'll put that on there in a second, but you put a bead across here like this, okay? Doesn't have to be very big, maybe an 1/8 inch bead, 1/8 inch thick bead, give or take. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want a nice steady bead going across, and then you're going to drop this guy down into that little slot on the head, and you should see a little bit smush out on each side, and you do that on both of them. And then on the valve cover itself, not the valve cover itself, but this is the front, okay? And this is where the cam cap is right here. These corners right here on the head surface, we're going to put a little dab of fibbage right there too, just a drop in those corners. The reason is because you can see the corners of these gaskets, it's a sharp 90-degree corner. If this doesn't get like seated just right, it could seep right here. So it's a good idea to put a little bit there and there on the head, and I'll show you that now. I had to cut a little bit off the tube there, but all right. So we're just gonna put just a nice little bead across here, and this might be a little bit heavy, but it's all right. And we're gonna go down here, and we're gonna drop it right onto that slot. Okay, you got a little bit squeezing out on each side. Like I said, that might be a little too heavy. I just had to cut this tube, and I think it opened it up a little bit too much. Try and go a little lighter on this one. All right. All right. So there's that. Okay, I'm gonna grab a little bit of that fibbage off of there, but then we're gonna put a little dab right here in the front of this cam cap, and then we're gonna do another little dab down here on this one as well on the bottom side. Doesn't take a whole lot. You're just kind of a little reassurance for when you go to put the new valve cover on gasket. We're gonna get that off there. That was a little. I'm gonna add a little dab right there because that was some dried up fibbage that was in the tube. All right. I was fighting that tube of fibbage because I had opened it up the other day. So, but anyway, we're ready to go. We're gonna slowly bring this valve cover down. Got to get it past the PCB hose. Okay, and you also want to be very careful not to knock the valve cover gasket off by dragging it across something. Okay, so but it's down in place, and then we're going to basically just kind of give it a little push back and forth like that. Okay, it is on, and you can actually see the tube seals go around the tube on each of them. So then we'll get our valve cover bolts, and we'll start putting these on. And also the specs on these, I'm going to clarify in just a second, but they are 53 inch-pounds, I believe. It is very, very important to not over torque these. I've seen it a lot where somebody over torques them and cracks the valve cover itself. It's very, very easy to do with this aluminum cast, valve cover. Usually it happens on one of these back corners. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to use my impact to run them in, and then I always go over them by hand. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, but you want to tighten them down evenly, as much as you can, evenly across. If you are going to use your impact, do not hammer them down, because you will break them, or break the valve cover probably. Probably not the bolt. Could break the bolt, but you'll probably break the valve cover. Okay. And I'm doing this one-handed because of where the camera is mounted to the hood. I kind of just in a weird spot. All right, so now we got them all snug, and then I'm going to go over them by hand. All right, so what we're going to do now, we got the valve cover bolts all tight. All right, we do have new plugs to go in before we put the coil packs on. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to grab my impact and the spark plug socket. If you can get one of these sets, they make life easy. They bring the plugs right out with them because they're magnetic, obviously. see if I can get this in there. Nope. All right, gonna do that one by hand. I have a ratchet, but I don't feel like getting it. These plugs aren't very tight either. I've seen it's important to get these plugs torqued down properly. I've seen plugs actually back out and on these engines and strip the threads out of the heads, and it is it's a pain in the butt to fix. I had to do it on my own GX 470, so I can't help but to take credit for putting the plugs in because it was me, but the plugs had 30,000 miles on them, so kind of, you know, crappy situation. But anyway, see what plugs these are. Oh wow, these are auto lights. Look at that. Those are some quality plugs right there. No wonder this thing was not running as smooth as it should. I'm not saying that the NGKs are, you know, the best, but way better than auto lights. But look at these turds. So, all right, we're gonna get the new plugs, drop them in there. All right, we're almost wrapped up. I'm gonna go ahead and get this PCV swapped out. This is we'll call it a 22. I'm using a 7/8 wrench, which I think comes out to be a 22. This one looks like it's been replaced before, probably why it's not extremely tight, but these can be pretty tight, so just keep that in mind. That's why I wanted to do it with the valve cover on. All right, we got our new OEM one. That's Toyota right there. Drop it in there. All right. I'll finish tightening that up in a second, but I was just gonna quickly go through putting all the coil packs on and the you know, fuel lines and getting everything wrapped up for the video. So I wiped the coil packs off, but drop these down in there. Okay. All right. Drop all those in there. Get your 10mm bolts back in. I will have the torque specs in the description on the video, but I did look them up. Let's see. The torque specs for the valve cover bolts, the 9 bolts, is 53 inch-pounds. The coil pack 10 mils right here, these are 66 inch-pounds. The spark plugs themselves are 13 foot-pounds. So, but I'll add that to the video description as well. And got my 10. Fumbling around a little bit. I'm hungry, and my wife came out a few minutes ago and said that dinner was ready. So I was trying to hurry it up for the sake of food. So hope you guys understand. All right, so get all your coil pack connectors. Okay, you're gonna drop them back down, plug them in. Okay. They can be plugged into the wrong coil, but for the most part, if you just follow the harness down, it's pretty easy not to mess up. So I'm gonna tighten that up before I finish that. But get your fuel line on. These fuel lines are covered in like a Teflon style like coating. You have to make sure that they go on nice and straight, or else they can rip the coating and they will leak. Okay, so make sure they go on smoothly. All right, that goes on there. so. All right, so that's everything, minus this up here, which I'm going to do in just a second. I'll tighten that up and then get my ground back on there. But real quick, what I wanted to do before I end this video off, this side, in my opinion, is the harder side just because of some of the lines and whatnot. It's a little bit tighter space, at least on the Tundra. Okay, um, this side over here, if you look, you have quite a bit of room. The only difference that you have to do over here, and you could probably do it without doing it, but is just to pull the air box off. So not the air box, but the intake tube. Okay, so you just pull this off, 210s right here. This comes off, and then you've got a 10 mil right here, and you've got a 10 mil hose clamp and a 10 mil hose clamp. You've got a couple hoses, right, one right there and a couple on the back here, and then you can pull this intake tube off. It's pretty straightforward. Once you get that out of the way, you'll have all the room you need to do the same process on this side that we did over there. New valve cover gasket, tube seals, spark plugs, and the half moons. Don't forget to reseal those, clean them up, reseal them, and then put a little dab of RTV or fibbage up there where the cam caps are, right in the corners. And that's pretty much it. Valve cover is done. Definitely, looks a little bit better. Not that it doesn't need to look good. It's, it's a truck. So, but anyway, thank you for watching. I'm gonna button this up and go eat some dinner. And I know somebody might see this radiator and say something about it, but I got a new one on the way. I'll do a video on that too, because we're going to do a 4-core aluminum radiator in here from Amazon. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, thank you for watching, and hit the subscribe button if you like what I'm doing. If you want to see more, I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you guys